Welcome back to NeuroConversant Leadership, where we talk about effective leadership and communication in the STEM workplace. I'm Jeremy Doran, and I love to help great technical professionals become great leaders. With us today is Divya Yerraguntla. Divya is a leader and influencer in the pharmaceutical industry and has been for 25 years. She's a speaker, a chairperson, board member, advisor, and a fellow podcaster. Divya, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. This is such an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you. And the description I gave, while impressive, is a little bit vague. Can you let us know what a day in the life actually looks like and what you're doing day to day?
So today it looks a little different than what it did last year. Been in healthcare and it was more on the operation side of things. Now I'm more on the advisory part of things. I look at companies to see, evaluate companies, also look at healthcare companies to see how can we bring them to market in the most efficient way possible and get the novel technologies to the patient's hands in the most efficient way. So that's what I do.
So you're advising companies on bringing like medical technology and or products to the market?
Exactly, yeah.
And what are some of the things that they typically need help with from you?
So most of the time, it's a company that has maybe launched outside of US. It's trying to bring the technology into US, so they don't understand the US market. And US market is very different than the rest of the world. It has its own nuances. So kind of understanding that part and then charting a plan for them. It's all about building that roadmap to say these are the 5 steps you need to do. And that's understanding what do they have already in place, what do we need in this market, and how do we translate some of the things so they're not redundantly creating the same stuff again, but how do we leverage what they have and really get them a head start into this market. And that works cross market everywhere. Other kind of companies are new companies, like they're brand new companies, great science, but they still don't understand how they're going to launch, right? Like they have a marketplace, they had funding, they understand how their technology works, how they're going to help the patients. But there are a lot of little steps in between that need to happen early on. And I think that's the one thing I'm very passionate about, understanding with end in mind, right? Where are you going? And I think we were talking about this, having that GPS. You put the address first. Where do you want to go? And then you look at the path that you will take, the most efficient, the fastest, the cheapest, no toll road. That's how assets are, like where do you want to go? And then build that into your plan at the clinical level. You cannot build a protocol or a clinical program and then try to get all your endpoints met. And then at the end, you're not able to launch because it's not commercially viable. So understanding that part, bringing that thinking in is, I think, what I help the companies with.
How long does that type of launch typically take?
It depends. So from the time you start your clinical research to the time you launch is anywhere between 8 to 10 years minimum. And so it's a long road. But nowadays, with a lot of oncology assets, a lot of rare diseases, you have a chance of combining 2 phases. So clinical studies are done in different phases. So you have to cross one phase, get favorable results to move on to the next one. But then in these specific therapeutic areas, you have the chance of doing less number of studies, combining 2 different phases in certain ways. So it kind of helps you because if you get a breakthrough therapy designation, you can move things faster forward. And that's why I think it's so important because you have only so much patent life, right? You're assigned a patent for that much life. And if you spend too much time within the studies, or if you spend too much time trying to commercialize, you're losing on your patent as well. As a business, that's important to understand where that money is coming from. And the key part also to understand is the money you're losing is at the tail end when your product is actually in the market, making the money, getting to the patients. So optimizing that time is crucial. So anything we can do to make sure that what you need for later stages, you're already building into your program really helps you expedite that last stage, which is your commercialization stage. Typically from the time you start planning to the time you launch a product in healthcare is about 18 months. And 12 months out of that is your final review by FDA. So you do start planning about 6 months through, you're filing for your NDA, and then you're getting an approval 10 to 12 months review, and then you have your commercial launch. So it's a lot of planning. I would say I know all the project management tools. You need to understand all the departments, what exactly they do, how are they interdependent, what are the dependencies. So you focus on the priorities so things keep moving. It's a very fascinating world.
Yeah, it always is. Any sort of program management type things where you need to map out the entire process
Yeah.
and get buy-in from so many different people. And particularly with you, they know so much. They have their baby, which is this new product or technology. And then they have to basically ask an outsider to help them do it. How do you get it so that they will listen to you and they won't just go on the path that they want to go on?
That's a great question. And I think that's what brings us to this whole communication, right? I think we have to be able to communicate in a manner that they understand what's the most important part. And you're absolutely right. And I think we had this discussion a little bit before too, right? Where it is just so hard. Change management is hard to begin with. Change management is hardest when you're trying to change somebody who has created the process, right? Or created the product. And now you're telling them your baby's ugly and you need to change this, you need to change that. But I think it's so important to align on the ultimate goal, because sometimes making sure they understand by changing a few things, you can get to a goal which is desirable for both of us. I think having that common goal is so important. And one thing that I use is I will give you 5 suggestions. You are, allowed to argue as much as you want. And then, a discussion is always good to understand, where we're going. That's when the best ideas come from. So having that discussion, disagreeing with each other is not a problem. But then I can disagree with you 3 times, you disagree with me 3 times. So you decide which discussions you want to completely go out, which hill are we going to die on? But only 3, because the discussion needs to keep moving on. And that has really worked well for me, because we start with 4 or 5 initially, and then it comes to 3 to 2 to 1. But the one thing we all know is we're all coming from a place of trust and a place of what needs to happen for this product, because I am as vested in your product as you are. So by suggestions, it doesn't mean you have to change it, but then this will help us move it forward faster. And also, I guess it helps being in the industry for this long, having done this for this long. Your word does carry some weight because they know you have done this, and sometimes they have not. This is the first company they have led, or this is the first asset that they have built from scratch. They've done other roles, so they understand the industry, but they don't understand how to take it forward. And I'm an enabler from them, right? I'm not taking it away from them. I'm just enabling them to get to market faster. So that helps. But it's the perspective, setting expectations. This is what you will expect, and then this is what our common goal is, and this is what we're working towards.
The common goal goes such a long way. Once it feels like a competition, then things can go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But letting them know the goal is the same. And when you talked about narrowing down the number of things that they can disagree on, I think that's pretty interesting. Like they get to prioritize what they push back on.
Right. It cannot be no for everything, because then we're going nowhere. We're going in circles.
Yeah.
And same thing stands for me. I can also not say no for everything, right? I also have to pick my battles and say, okay, this is the one I will give, but this is non-negotiable.
Got it. And in just approaching it from a yes and, you talked about, you should never tell someone their baby's ugly. But if you say what you have is great and here's how we can make it even better, that just softens the blow. You have a beautiful baby. We can make it even more beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And we had done this exercise a couple of times, and it's fascinating. Every time you learn something new coming out of that improv, yes, and
Yep.
yeah, it's definitely something I would use. Like it's a great tool in our toolbox, right?
Love it. And when you are dealing with these people, they started out as technical people to come up with this, and now they're leading a company. Can you tell me what you observe in them about making the transition from being, the technical doers to being leaders?
I think the one key thing is delegation. They don't delegate because they've done this for so long. They're like, oh, instead of explaining and teaching this person for 2 hours, I can do it in 2 minutes. Great, but you don't have that many 2 minutes in a day. How many 2 minute worth jobs will you do? And now you're the CEO or some C-suite person. You have better things to do. My husband always gives this example, in a bank teller, your salary is based on what denomination of notes you're counting, at least where we grew up. So the person who counts the $1 bills gets less money than the one who's counting the $20 or $100 bill. It's the same job. It's counting the money. But what money you count makes a huge difference. It's the same in C-suite role. What you spend your time is very important. So don't do things that somebody else can do. Teach them to fish so they can keep fishing for you. And you can move on to better things. And that's, I think, the one mindset that sometimes people, again, not everybody, but some people don't get that because they're like, oh my God, I'm so good at it. They're not doing good enough job and I could have done it 100 times better. Great. But now you're the leader. You have to develop your teams, make them, even if they're doing 80% of what you could do, if you build five of you doing 80%, that's way more than you doing 100%, right? So I think that mindset has to come in. That's the one thing I see, lack of delegation and lack of trust in the capabilities. When you hire somebody to do a job, let them do their job. They will not be perfect day one. Know that. It's a learning curve. They will get there. So be patient, give them the opportunity to make a few mistakes and establishing that team environment to say, it's okay to make mistakes. You can always come to me for help because I've done this 100 times, but do it to the best ability. And my philosophy has always been make mistakes, it's okay. Just don't make the same mistake again.
Yeah.
Learn from your mistakes, right?
I love that. I love delegation. And when I am talking to newer leaders, I say we're going to talk about delegation today. At least half of them roll their eyes and someone will stand up and say, I tried it once, it doesn't work. I'm like, well, let's figure out how to do it in a better way. And once they come to the realization that it's not just about saving their own time, but it's the way to teach and develop your employees, that is one thing that helps shift their mind. Oh, I'm not just saving my own time. This is how I teach. And that helps them make the transition. And the people who say, I tried it once, it doesn't work, are the ones who are most transformed when they start doing it well.
Exactly. And I think we talk from the business perspective as leaders, we always talk about scalability. How scalable is the business? Can we do this? Can we get into the next market? And when can we get to, the next indication? But then why don't we look at scalability within our own teams? Like you have to make your teams also scalable. Like how are you showing them growth? How are you retaining your talent? And how are you making sure that there's a multiplier effect? So wherever you go as a leader, you should have a multiplier effect. People should become better because you were their leader, right? And they should be achieving for greater goals, bigger ambitions, bigger dreams for the company and for themselves too.
Yeah. I always tell everyone your job is to obsolete yourself. If you get enough people who can do your job, then you are free to do the next thing.
Yeah. There's another saying, don't grow roots, then you can't fly.
Oh,
I
nice.
think most of the leaders make that mistake. They become so entrenched on the nuances and minutiae of the things that happening. You are growing roots, like let people deal with that. Then you can, dream bigger, fly for your team and take them up with you. So, yeah.
I've never heard that saying before, but now I'm going to use it. Thank you.
Sure.
One thing that you had mentioned, which goes back to delegating well and making sure they don't make the same mistake again, is timely and specific feedback. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit more about that?
So, one of the things that I firmly believe feedback is a gift, right? And I always tell my teams, like, I'll give you very candid feedback. I'm not a person to, beat around the bush. I'll give you the feedback, but take it as a gift. And same thing with me. You give me feedback because all of us can improve, and I'll also take it as a gift. And one of the things is three things, right? The feedbacks has to be very specific. Like, don't give this overarching feedback of you can do better in the presentation. No, what because there were some things that were done well. Where are the specific areas? It has to be timely. Again, I don't believe in sitting for your quarterly review and then reading a laundry list of things they did wrong. Tell them immediately so they can improve. And when you sit down, it's really the key things you're discussing, right? Instead of discussing 100 things that went wrong in every little presentation here, there, that person said this, that needs to happen on a regular basis. That's one, right? It's very specific, very timely. And then I think also how you deliver the feedback is so important. I always feel, and this was me when I was growing up in my career, there were certain mentors who gave me feedback, really, crucial feedback. I needed to hear it. At the time, I was very touchy, took it very personally. But the way they delivered it made a huge difference. And I think that's something as leaders we need to work on. Give feedback, absolutely give feedback. Be very specific on what are the things they can work on to improve. What are the things you want to see more of? That's important too. What are they doing great? But then give it immediately and then give it in such a way that it doesn't. And I always start to say, hey, there is nothing personal. We're all here to make this company great, this product great. So again, shared goal, this is what we are trying to achieve. And I am in a position to give you feedback today because I have done this before. If you find something that you've done before and I can improve upon, it's a two-way street. Absolutely give it. But here is what I see can be done to make this product better. So it's not personal. It's not you did this wrong, you did that wrong. But in this presentation, if that slide was too wordy, I can say, hey, by making it more, visual, it will impact our results, right? Because we get buy-ins faster. So it's packaging it in such a way that you're saying you can improve in these three things for sure. Maybe take a training. That's your IDP discussion. The feedback discussion really needs to be, this is how we can move the needle forward, right? In the right direction. So that I feel has really helped. And I've gotten a lot of feedback too from the people I've mentored, from my teams. And they all appreciate the fact that they know they will get the feedback immediately and it will not be wrapped in so many layers where they don't even understand what the heck I'm trying to say to them. Tell them as is. And I always tell them, by improving these things, where do we see ourselves? Like, how are we improving? Because then that way they can also communicate it forward, you know, to others. And this is the vision, this is how we want to go, and this is how I'm contributing to it.
I love that. A couple things in there. You talk about the way you deliver it, and I think the more specific it is, the easier it is to accept. If you say, that was terrible, that's not going to be received well. But if there's one very specific thing that needed work, it's a lot harder to argue with that. Like you say, oh, yes, that one thing was a problem. So the more specific, the easier it is for people to digest. And I love the fact that you don't just say what needs to change, but you say what the outcome is likely to be when you do change. That just makes it a lot more powerful. When we were talking previously, you have talked about the fact that being a runner and a musician makes you a better leader, and I am really fascinated to hear how that's the case.
So I'll talk about the runner part first. You're always trying to better yourself, not because you're competing with somebody, but because you're competing with yourself. And this is for yourself, right? You're trying to make your PR. It's called a personal record because that's what you're aiming for. And you don't give up. Things will happen. And sometimes you have to take a step back. You have, like, analogy, right? You work towards running 4 days a week. You do strength training. You have a rest day. Like, there's a schedule. Similarly, when you're a leader, you need to understand when to back off. It's not always go, 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 go. Nobody can sustain that. There need to be some backing off. There needs to be some patience. There will be pain, knowing fully well that you're going to get stronger after that. Having that mindset that pain is okay. And it's okay to push through because you want to do better, but have the rest days. That's one. Being a musician teaches you, there is a lot that goes in until you're at a point where you're performing. There are a lot of steps that go in. So having that patience and having that, giving grace to others to say, okay, it takes time. It's not something that will happen tomorrow. Like, you give something a new task that they've never done before, expect time. And also expect that you will be holding hands for a while, but that's okay. when they actually get independent, it's going to be smooth sailing from that point on. And music also teaches you self reflection. You sing for yourself, you do not sing for others. When you're singing, and I do classical, so for that, you're really reflecting within yourself and then saying, okay, what are the things I want to achieve out of this specific session? And as you know, they say every run has a purpose. Every practice has a purpose too, whether it's a yoga practice, whether it's a music practice, whether it's, a piano practice. Every practice has a purpose. Some of them is all about going slow, because going slow also takes more effort than actually going fast. So having these mindsets come together, I feel makes you a stronger leader. And I'm not just saying you need to have only these two, but find some passion that you're passionate about, whether it's painting, whether it's dancing, whatever that is as a leader, and try to see how are those things helping you. And it's also a great way to relax, because our days are stressful, they're long, they're hectic, they're filled with controversy and discussions. So having that wind down, having that passion that can really reset you, really helps.
I am a runner myself, and a friend of mine who had never run a marathon before was asking for my advice. And I said, the number one thing you need to do is not get injured.
Yeah.
And the way that you don't get injured is by not pushing through when you're starting, when a little injury is little until you try to push through it and then it becomes bigger. I also loved what you said about every run has its purpose. One thing that we would always say is make your fast runs faster and make your slow runs slower.
Yeah.
And sometimes you really just need to slow down, and it can be hard to get yourself to do it.
Same thing with classical music. Holding a note for longer is harder than singing notes fast. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So if you're able to hold a note for very long, you can sing fast like nobody's business. You just have to have the discipline and have the patience.
Yeah, it's like that in a lot of sports too. People always want to speed things up,
Yeah.
dancing, sports, that sort of thing. Curious about your singing. Do you record yourself and listen to it to get get your own feedback?
I used to do that a lot. And I would actually send my recordings to other people to get feedback, not just listen to it myself, but send it to others. And this was way back when we used to have those tape recorders. I
Yeah.
don't know when I'm dating myself. We used to have those tape recorders, and you would actually re record on top of the existing tape because there were only so many. I
Right.
still remember the Sony black and white tape. And
Yep.
we would re-record and I would mail it out and get feedback back, because I was in school at the time. So one of my teachers was not in the same town. So I would send it, get the feedback, and then re-record my next one. Yeah, but it helps. It helps. And it helps you see through other people's eyes. And that's another big thing. I think as a leader, we don't do a good job of asking for 360-degree feedback. We only do it when the company mandates it, or one HR leader who understands the importance of it says, okay, you have to do at least one a year. And you always send it to friends and family, like, people who like you anyway, because you want a good review. It's going on your HR file. But one thing I started doing a few years ago was do my own 360. And I would go to my worst critics, because it's not the people who like me who need to tell me, because they'll anyway tell me things I want to hear and they know what I am. How am I improving? If I can turn my hardest critics into my supporters, is when I improve the most. So again, going back to what's the most impactful part is asking feedback. And again, comes with a grain of salt, right? You don't have to take every piece of feedback they give you, because you understand where it's coming from. Again, feedback, you have to selectively decide what you want to take and what you want to work on. But having that feedback becomes your strength, because suddenly you're asking them, okay, I know you did not agree with three things I did, and I thought I was successful, but you don't agree. I want to understand what was your perspective. What could I have done better? What could I have done differently? And why did you think my idea was not the best idea, or the way I was doing it? What could I have done different? Having those questions in my past have turned some of my hardest critiques into my mentors. And I'm so thankful for that. And this did not come easy. I used to take feedback very personally. This was many, many years ago. And then another mentor he had said, it's nothing personal. We all come here, we take a paycheck, we're working for the company, for the best of the company. So don't take it as a personal attack, because that's not what it is. It's essentially they think a different way on how the company needs to go versus you. You can just come to an agreement. And that shift of mindset really helped.
It is so hard for people to seek out feedback. It's even hard for people to listen to themselves. Like, I've videotaped myself doing presentations, and getting myself to sit down and watch, I kind of have to look through my fingers at it. But for me, I found you eventually get used to it. Like, I need to listen to myself because I edit my own podcast. And if you do it enough and you get enough feedback, then you can develop the muscle of accepting it and not cringing. Was there anything other than repetition that helped you? You talked about the mindset. Were there any other things that you do to help people be better at seeking and accepting criticism?
One of the things is, again, it's how it's packaged, right? But some people just give it to you straight, and that's okay. And that's what I've told my mentees a lot of time. If a feedback is being given, the minute they say, oh, you sucked at this, people stop listening. That word comes and you're like, oh my god, they hate me, they don't like me. From that point on, you're missing on all the critical things. It starts after that point. So my thing is like, don't turn off your brain at that point. I'm like, words don't matter at this point, just go to the key points they're trying to get across. So understanding that it's not the words or actions that matter, it's the intention. The fact that they're spending time sitting with you giving feedback means they care enough about you. It's very easy in this world to say, hey, that's fine, it was great, and move on, and then say, oh, that sucked. But you know what? Who has time to tell them? I am too busy. If they're sitting down with you, that in itself is your gift, right? They're spending the time, they're spending the effort, they're articulating something, and it's very hard to give feedback that's negative too. It's again, it's not easy to take it. It's not easy to give it either. Nobody wants to tell somebody on their face, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, right? We, as social beings, want to be polite to each other. So, and that's what I tell them, understand it's hard to give feedback to. The fact that they're sitting down giving you the hard feedback is something you should be very happy about, and you're fortunate to be getting that gift from them. So listen carefully, keep emotions out of it, first of all. Take all the feedback, make notes, go back, and then let your emotions come through. Look at the key notes first. Okay, this is what they were telling me. Now, in your privacy, let your emotions go wild. You can cry, do whatever because you felt bad. Again, we are people, we feel bad. Get it out of your system. But once it's out of your system, it's not emotional. Their feedback is what you need to act on and see what's the best plan of action to get that feedback incorporated. Sometimes it's short term, take a course, you're done. Sometimes it's long term. Changing habits, behavior is not easy. So that takes time, and that needs to be built into your everyday activities, plans. One of the things I used to do was I would say, this happened because, and I would go on. And one of the feedback was, that's a lot more details than we had asked for. And so that was early on in my career. So at that point, and this is again way back when, where we did not have like these big monitors or anything, right? We used to have the regular small monitors, 256 MB space. So you can put reminders. Those were not there. So I had like a literally 3 post-it note stuck on my laptop, which was already too small, but I had it up there to say no because. So in my sentences, there could not be a because. You tell the facts and you leave it there. If they ask questions, you can dig deeper. Well, you're not going to start with your because and then start going. And that kind of feedback really helped me. And that really changed the way I started looking at things, because when I was preparing facts. And then in my back pocket, I had my other things. Not everything was upfront, right? So it helps. And it wasn't easy taking that feedback at that point. But did it help me in the next 20 years? Absolutely. And I am so thankful to that person for that piece of feedback.
That is feedback that most people in STEM fields could use. They
We
love
use a lot of jargon.
they
That's
love
another
to
one.
start with the details. They'll start with the details and then they'll ask the important. They'll basically bury the important question and start with the details. So that's great advice for everybody. And I'm a word person. I love the fact that earlier on you said that's the critical piece of information in the feedback. And I love the fact that critical means that A, it's the most important, but the other definition of it is it's the thing that's kind of negative. You're giving criticism. So I love the fact that critical means both the thing that can improve and the most important thing. That's fun.
That's a really good
Yep.
point. Yeah.
Words are fun. I like words. All right. Unfortunately, we need to start wrapping up. So let me start with how can people reach out and or learn more about you?
So connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect with me. And yeah, reach out. We can set up a virtual coffee if anybody wants to chat. I'm always up for that. I love learning from everybody. So the more people I talk to, I learn more things. So absolutely open to doing that. But LinkedIn would be the best way.
Perfect. And now let me ask you my three favorite questions. The first one about travel, a place you've been and loved, and a place you've not yet been but want to go.
I'll go with Jordan. I've just seen amazing pictures. It's been on my list. Something or the other keeps happening, and I haven't made it there yet, but that's definitely someplace I want to go.
Nice. And where have you been and loved?
Where have I already been and loved it? So there's just so many amazing places. But I would say Egypt, like tops it all.
Nice.
Only because for me it was very personal. I've been reading about Egyptian culture and civilization for many, many, many years. I started when I was in my fourth grade. So for me, that trip like was everything I had looked forward to and more. So Egypt.
Nice. I've been, it was fantastic. I recommend it. And who do you think is a great communicator?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Tell us why.
He is very clear on what he's delivering, right? It's not about I have this feature, I have that feature. It's about you get to do this, you get to do that, right? So it's all about from the consumer perspective of things. So the whole customer experience was something so important to him, and all of his communications was what's in it for you. And I think as a communicator, that's the key thing you need to understand who your audience are and what is in it for them to be listening to you saying whatever you're saying. So having that perspective is so important as a communicator, and I think he did an incredible job of that.
He really did. And what's in it for you, the listener, is a great way to think of it. I boil it down to so what? If I tell you something, so what? Why should you care about that? That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then lastly, what's one piece of communication advice we can all benefit from?
I would say keep it simple. People have this tendency to use complicated words and to sound very good. Keep it simple. I'm a big propagator of bullet points. Even in your mind, when you're talking, have two or three bullet points. What is it that you want to communicate? Go bullet by bullet. It's very easy, and you won't get distracted or go down a rabbit hole in a parallel discussion. So, as a communicator, making sure the focus is back on the topic of discussion and getting to a consensus on whatever you want to reach, whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a decision, making sure you're making your way towards that with every piece of communication is important. So having that in your mind, extremely important. So keep it simple, keep it concise, and ask. Ask whatever you want the people to either respond back to has to be part of that. Like I see so many meetings, there is no purpose, there is no ask at the end of it. I'm like, why were we meeting? Like, do you need a decision? Do you need consensus? Like, what is it that you need? That needs to be forefront. And I typically like to see that upfront when the meeting starts. This is why we're meeting for. This is my ask. So while we are attending the meeting, you're thinking about that. At the end, he's going to ask me this or she's going to ask me this. What's my view? So you're not just listening or hearing, you're literally understanding on why you're being presented this. So that's important.
Yeah, it's great advice, not just for big meetings, but any conversation. If you can let them know the purpose, whether I'm just going to tell you a funny story or
Right.
I need your help or I want your advice, letting them know up front helps them listen better.
Right. We have attention spans that are going down by the
Yeah.
second. Like in the last 5 years, it has gone down quite a bit based on a recent survey. So getting that first key bit of information up front will help you later.
actually recently read a study that claims the human attention span is now shorter than a goldfish. I don't see how that
I
can be
don't doubt
right,
that.
but
I
yeah,
don't doubt it at
scary.
all. Yeah.
All right, Divya, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. This was such a great conversation. Really appreciate you having me on this.
Thank you so much for listening to NeuroConversant Leadership. If you found this beneficial, can you do me one small favor? It'll be quick, I promise. Can you go and give this podcast a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen before doing anything else, unless you're driving. If you're driving, then I need you to keep driving. And then when you're done and parked, then go ahead and give me a review, hopefully 5 stars, but whatever you are comfortable honestly giving. Thank you and have a great day.